I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today. I'm Stephen Brennan, and I'm the chairman of the National Security Commission of the American Legion. I'd especially like to thank members of the press for taking time to learn about the imminent crisis facing our allies, the thousands of Afghan interpreters who risked their lives to help the United States government during the global war on terrorism. I'd like to offer special welcome to our distinguished guests, including Representative Jason Crowe from Colorado and Representative Mike Waltz from Florida, for pushing the President Biden administration to set a plan of action to evacuate Afghan translators who helped American forces. Since the 9/11 terror attacks, the United States government has employed thousands of local Afghan translators to help the United States forces during the global war on terrorism. These brave Afghan soldiers should shoulder with shoulder of U.S. troops during multiple operations, risking their lives and some paying the ultimate sacrifice in service to our country. In exchange for their help, the United States promised a path to United States citizenship for Afghan interpreters and their families through a special immigration visa program. The visas allow these wartime allies to resettle in the United States after demonstrating that their lives were threatened because of their work in support of the United States mission. Unfortunately, with less than 100 days remaining before the September 11th deadline for U.S. troops to withdraw from Afghanistan, there are approximately 18,000 Afghan interpreters waiting in limbo for visas due to the bureaucratic red tape and limited spots, a process that can take 800 plus days. My friends, I'm afraid there is no plan and the time has run out. A bold new course of action is required to deliver on our promise to our allies. The American Legion demands that the United States government act now to implement a plan to extract Afghan interpreters who assisted the United States forces in Afghanistan. Failure to do so puts the lives of these translators and their families in serious jeopardy. They're already receiving death threats from ISIS, the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and others because of their service to the United States. And make no mistake, once we are gone, these groups will act on their threats. This is not the first time we have faced this same issue. The United States has conducted evacuations at a far greater scale after Vietnam and at the end of the Iraqi-Kurdish civil war. We have experience with this type of evacuation in times of crisis, and the current environment in Afghanistan clearly merits such action. It would be a moral failure to withdraw our troops and leave behind the Afghan interpreters who helped us. Not to mention, it could create a serious national security issue for future military operations if we were going to make promises that we don't keep. Who is going to want to help the United States if we don't keep our promises? Now, I'd like to introduce Nick Griffel, our National Security Policy Advisor for the American Legion, to share his personal experience working side by side in Afghanistan with our interpreters. Nick?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. It's good to be here with you. I am pleased to be part of this press briefing. I served 2 tours in the deadliest years of the war in Afghanistan from 2009, 10, and 11 with 1st Battalion 6 Marines as a designated marksman and an infantry team leader. During my time in country, I saw many interpreters come and go. Some fled, others abducted, and many killed while serving with me and other American troops in combat. Many of them risking their lives on a daily basis in support of the Marines to my right and to my left in the global war on terrorism. While doing so, they left behind friends and family, not knowing if they would ever return in search of a better life once helping Americans and coalition forces. Many of the interpreters that were first embedded with U.S. Marines wore face masks to conceal their identity for fear of repercussion that could lead to the death of their family members. Many of the Afghan interpreters served honorably for well over 24 months in imminent danger alongside frontline combat troops. One of which I served with from 2009 to 2010, and he was killed in 2013 with pictures of his dead body posted on his Facebook, from which I received, by the Taliban. He was awaiting his visa at the time of his death. There are currently 18,000 plus Afghanistan interpreters that are awaiting the special immigrant visa process. This is not a new issue, as the U.S. left behind many of our allies in Vietnam. With the imminent withdrawal of all American troops from the country in September, we cannot hesitate to pull out all of our interpreters that meet the requirements for the special immigrant visas. We strongly encourage the U.S. government to fulfill their obligation to our heroic Afghan interpreters by keeping our Afghan allies safe. If I had it my way, I would ask the U.S. government to provide a pathway to citizenship to our Afghan interpreters that meet all the criteria and have served honorably shoulder to shoulder with U.S. troops in support of a pathway to citizenship. The American Legion looks forward to the continued support from our members of Congress and other nonprofit organizations' involvement in the Special Immigrant Visa Program for Afghan interpreters. Thank you. I will now turn it over to Representative Crowe.
Thank you to Stephen and Nick. It is really an honor to be standing here with my fellow Legionnaires and advocates on this issue, as well as my good friend and fellow combat veteran Mike Waltz from Florida. I'm Jason Crowe from Colorado, and before I was a member of Congress, I was a paratrooper and an Army Ranger. I served 3 combat tours in total in Iraq and Afghanistan. And for those who know me, they know that I'm not somebody that tends to exaggerate. I don't deal in hyperbole. But it's not an exaggeration for me to say that I may not be here today, standing in front of you with the honor of representing the state of Colorado, had it not been for brave Afghan and Iraqi interpreters, translators, and others who stood by me, fought with me shoulder to shoulder, warned me of risks, helped us get our mission done. I owe a debt of gratitude to these men and women, and that's why I'm here today. Now, make no mistake, there is a moral imperative at play here. The American handshake has to mean something. You know, we are strong as a country not just because of the number of tanks and planes that we have or our carrier battle groups, but we are strongest when we have friends. We are strongest when we join arms with our allies and our partners and we address threats together. And for that to happen, people need to know that the American handshake matters, that we will stand by them through thick and thin. We will have future risks. We will have future conflicts and adversaries. And those future partners that we are relying on or will rely on in the future are watching now how we treat our current ones. But this is also a personal issue for us. So many of us can point back to our time in service. The numbers that we talked about, the 18,000 Afghans that are waiting in line. For us, those numbers have names, they have faces, and they have families. And that's why we are here today, to urge the Biden administration to do the right thing and to evacuate those who stood by us at great personal risk. But we're doing more as well. We formed a bipartisan Honoring Our Promises working group in Congress last month to show the American people, to show the administration that this has broad-based bipartisan support, not just in Congress, but across the country. That people understand that this is the right thing for us to do. We introduced 3 weeks ago a bill that would vastly expedite the SIV process by waiving the in-country medical exam requirement. And tomorrow we're introducing a package of bills called the Allies Act that will do the same, increase the cap on SIVs and also make fixes to the program to speed it up and get as many folks out as possible. But there remains much, much more to do. So I'm honored to be here with my friends, my brothers, my sisters, my comrades, to say our country will debate for decades to come the war in Afghanistan. The successes, the failures, the missteps, that debate will happen. But what is clear and what is undebatable is that the manner in which we pull out in the months ahead will matter a lot. And there is honor to be had in doing this the right way in standing by our friends. So with that, it is my pleasure to introduce my friend Mike Waltz from Florida.
Thanks, Jason. Yeah, thank you. Hey, Representative Mike Waltz from the great state of Florida. I'm a Green Beret by background with multiple combat tours in Afghanistan. And like my friend and colleague Jason Crowe, I too would likely not be here if it had not been for the actions of a brave interpreter that stood with me in combat, shoulder to shoulder against the Taliban, and all of them that stood shoulder to shoulder with us, not just putting their lives on the line, but their entire families' lives on the line to take a public stand against extremism. So, Jason, I thank you for your leadership on this. I want to thank the Legion for being here today and putting the weight of your membership behind this, because you all know it's the right thing to do. And I just can't thank you enough. Look, I want to be clear and I want to be blunt. In 1975, then Senator Biden voted against the evacuation of our Vietnamese allies. Had he had his way, we would not have gotten those people out. Fast forward, years later in my last combat tour in Afghanistan, my executive officer was a Vietnamese American who was evacuated as a young boy. His mother worked in our embassy there. His father was in the South Vietnamese Army, was being targeted by the communists for taking a stand with the United States, for taking a stand for freedom. And that gentleman then went on to graduate number 2 at West Point and serve as my executive officer in Afghanistan. How many future Afghan families, how many great American contributions won't we have if President Biden doesn't act and act now? And I want to be clear. If he doesn't act and he doesn't get these people out, blood will be on his hands and on his administration's hands. And I, for one, will very publicly and very loudly hold him accountable for that. The time for talk, the time for debate is over. The Defense Department is accelerating its withdrawal. It plans to be out far sooner than September 11th. We're closing our only air base in just a few weeks, which I personally think is a strategic mistake. But here nor there, we have a moral obligation. We have a moral and national security obligation to get these people out. Evacuate them now. Find a third country. I don't care if it's in Qatar. I don't care if it's in the UAE. I don't care if it's in Guam. We've done it before. We can do it again. Get them out now. Do the paperwork, the processing, the appropriate vetting later. I don't know how to be louder in our support. You don't find many things in Congress these days that have such loud and vocal, bicameral, bipartisan support. The Defense Department has said they're ready to do it. The Congress has said they're ready to support it. The Afghans are begging. I can't even look at my phone right now with the amount of Afghans that are begging for help, saying, we stood with you. Won't America stand with us? And the only question is, where is the order from the White House? Where is that green light to do the right thing? And Representative Crowe is absolutely right. The rest of the world is listening, whether they're their local allies in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Africa. You know, the war on terrorism isn't over because the White House decided it doesn't want to be in Afghanistan anymore. We are dealing with a generational war against extremism. It has spread all over the world. We will need local allies. And if we break this promise, if we don't keep to our commitments in Afghanistan, that will have strategic implications around the world. That blood that will be on this administration's hands will have an effect on American soldiers that are currently operating by, with, and through, as they should, our local allies around the world. So thank you all again for covering this. I don't know how to be any stronger in demanding action. We are running out of time. And when that last soldier goes wheels up, out of Afghanistan, it is a death sentence for our local allies. The Taliban have made that clear in their words and in their actions as they hunt these people down right now as we speak. Thank you so much. God bless.
Okay, this concludes. Do we have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
For the congressman, when you guys are briefed, Austin Landis respectively, when you guys are briefed by State Department, NSC, whoever it is, what is their reasoning for not doing evacuation? Is it money? Is it logistics? What are they telling you?
Yeah, the decision to make or conduct an evacuation is a policy decision that would have to be made by the president and the White House. So the Department of Defense has made it very clear repeatedly by statements from General McKenzie, Chairman Milley, Secretary Austin, and others that they are developing contingency plans, have developed already some contingency plans to conduct an evacuation if they were ordered to do so. Folks at the State Department have said the same. So, but ultimately, that's a decision that has to be made by the White House, and it is my hope that the president will make that decision.
And has he answered any of you all's letters, or have you talked to anyone at the White House about this direction?
Yeah, we did get an answer to a letter, I think it was last week, that we had sent back in February. There have been multiple other letters that have been sent that we're still waiting on responses from. And we continue to be briefed and have discussions with members of the National Security Council, the State Department, and Department of Defense.
One more question. What is Congress as well willing to do to fund an evacuation if that happened? Are you willing to appropriate funds?
Well, we'd have to look at the scope of that evacuation, but the fact that you have such broad bipartisan support, and there's a lot of support for even lifting the cap, people understand that that's a funding that would have to occur and have to happen if that order were given.
Look, we're getting a lot of happy talk from my perspective. There's meetings. They're doing what DC does. A lot of interagency meetings, a lot of planning. The Pentagon's made it clear they're ready to do this. They just need the order from the White House. And why that order isn't being given, that's a great question that I would love an answer to. But if we look at the trend, where again in 1975, President then Senator Biden said there was no moral obligation to get our allies out. That's the only thing at this point I can point to, is the president himself doesn't think this is important or a priority. I do think there is a false notion that we have time after we leave, that we can kind of get around to the paperwork. That's my fear, that there is this belief in the White House that American soldiers can leave, we can shut down air bases, and then we can continue to process paperwork. And again, I think that's a death sentence for these poor people.
What about our former colleagues in the war on terror, Brits and whatnot? What are they doing?
That's a great question. My understanding is as the United Kingdom has removed its interpreters. There's also the Germans have removed theirs. They've lived up to their commitments. The United States needs to live up to theirs. And I just want to make one more point. It's not just the interpreters. It's school teachers. It's journalists. It's 25% of the Afghan parliament is set aside for women. These women have repeatedly suffered assassination attempts, acid thrown on their faces. We're hearing credible reports now of Taliban-controlled areas where elected women are no longer allowed to step into their office. So the other piece to this is the refugee cap. The administration just raised the refugee cap to 62,000. If you look at the Vietnam model, there was a parole model, there was a refugee model. President Ford then showed leadership and told the interagency, told his administration, find ways to get this done. That's the leadership we need to see from President Biden right now. And I don't mean that to sound partisan in any way, shape, or form. This has bipartisan support. We just need the commander-in-chief to give the green light and do the right thing.
And I agree, and just to dovetail on that question, I agree with Mike that I believe there is a notion that we have more time than we do. The withdrawal is about 50% complete. It's happening at a much faster rate than anyone expected. I believe it'll be substantially complete next month.
Yep.
At this rate. We have very little time. I think that we're going to continue to see a degradation of the security environment there. And with respect to our allies, one very important issue is the security of Kabul airport. We're already seeing the provinces fall into the hands of the Taliban. The outer ring road has security checkpoints and is becoming largely impassable. So one of the issues that I've raised to the administration is we need to find a way to move applicants from the outer provinces into the Kabul security perimeter. Because after we leave, the freedom of movement will become almost impassable. And then in addition to that, we are trying to figure out a way to get Turkey to stay and to secure the Kabul airport. They have said that they are willing to do it, but from the Taliban's perspective, they believe that our withdrawal includes the withdrawal of all NATO forces, including Turkish forces as well. So that's being negotiated right now.
Yeah, and if I could just add one more thing. I mean, one thing that's important for people to understand, you have to bring like binders of documentation, the Afghans do, to prove that they meet the criteria, that they've worked with us, and that's fine. That vetting should be in place. If they're stopped at a checkpoint by the Taliban, as happened to one of my interpreters, they're dead. So the very process with which they have to go through could very well kill them. So I think Representative Crowe is absolutely right, and there are many things that we could be doing to make this much easier and to make this less life-threatening. And it's not just them. Imagine if not only did you put your life on the line, but your entire family's life on the line to go through this process. We need to get them out. And Representative Crowe is absolutely right. Time is running out very, very quickly.
Just quickly,
Yes,
what is the most practical, doable solution? Is it some kind of a third country? Is it leaving maybe a contingency force, as I think Senator Inhofe has suggested, to secure the airport or something like that? What do you think is the most practical thing we can do as people?
I think the most practical thing is to evacuate pending applicants to Guam. We have a history of doing it. We don't have to reinvent that wheel. We know how to do it. We've been in close coordination with the representative from Guam and the governor of Guam, who have said that they are willing to step up.
Yep.
And they will make it happen, that they support it. Time is the most important thing here, and we don't have it. We can take these folks, we can get them out of country into Guam, and then we can take the time that we need to make sure that this is done the right way. But we don't have the time if they are to remain in Afghanistan, and that is the crux of the issue.
Okay. Any more questions?
Well, I hope you'll ask those same questions to the administration. Where is the green light? President Biden, do the right thing. Erase your mistake of your past votes when it came to Vietnam. Step up. It's not just the right thing morally, it's the right thing strategically. If we have to go back into Afghanistan, if Al-Qaeda comes roaring in the wake of a Taliban takeover, as ISIS did in the wake of the precipitous withdrawal from Iraq, and we have to go back in, what local allies will we have? Who will trust us to work with us again? That's when it's American soldiers' lives on the line if we have to go back. So the implications here are huge. And I just can't thank you all enough. I can't thank you enough, Representative Crowe, for being a leader on this. I know it isn't easy. And yeah, God bless.
All right, thank you.
So from the American Legion, this is one of our top priorities. We've been working on this since 2018, where we wrote a resolution trying to get this movement going. So about 2 months ago, we sent a letter to the President of the United States and the Secretary of State, basically saying we are out of time. We need to do this now. So that's what we're hoping. We agree with both congressmen. We're out of time. We need to move now. We need to start getting the Afghan interpreters, translators out now. Are there any more questions? Okay.
I came a little bit late, but how has your outreach been with the Biden administration from a Veteran Affairs, from the American Legion perspective and a congressional perspective? You said you talked to them before. Do they see the same urgency? Is that at the top of their plate right now when he's overseas dealing with green flag recruit and stuff? Do you think that the administration's distracted? What do you think's going on here that it hasn't sort of led to this?
Just want to take that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of folks within the administration that understand the urgency, both at DOD and the State Department. And from my perspective, the engagement and the communication with the administration has been very good. I've had multiple briefings with the National Security Council, the State Department, DOD, and they have kept us apprised. But ultimately, as we've said, there has to be a policy decision made by the White House for this to be accomplished. And that's what we're pushing for and what needs to happen.
I would just echo that. I mean, there actually has been a series of engagements, good engagements. I want to see action. Like, I understand that you're working in the interagency to tee up options to the president. When are you going to tee those options up? When is he going to make a decision? And then when are we going to see action? Because we're running out of runway, we're running out of time. And I think that is the fundamental disconnect. People who haven't served over there, frankly, are making these decisions. And I think this is just my speculation, I'll be candid, but I think there is a belief that we can just kind of continue this process on after American soldiers leave. And I can tell you they're being hunted down right now as we speak. I have an interpreter that we successfully managed to get out years ago on the cover of my book. His brother was just ambushed and shot last week. His brother never worked with us, but because, again, it's not just their lives, it's their families' lives. And those are the allies that we need if we're ever going to get Afghanistan to a better place where it can defend itself against extremism. We allow them to be hunted down. It truly has strategic consequences. So we need action from the Biden administration. No more briefings. What's the decision? What's the action? And let's move out.